One of these days, we're just gonna have to get a big studio just so I can stop doing this.
Our world is falling apart.
In more ways than one, perhaps. Oh goodness.
Well, welcome to a rainy morning in Arizona.
I know,
Sean.
it's cold. Well, I'm sitting here. I'm like, oh man, my fingers are like feel stiff and
this is my happy weather.
I know it really. Well, I think I mentioned it to you yesterday or something, and it was like, what was different? Because it does, it does rain in the desert. We usually have some rainy season stuff, and but usually when it rains, it's not a nice rain. It's usually like a downpour that's associated with like monsoon season.
Yep.
But in the winter months, we can get like we're getting now, which is like a soaking rain, which is like a light rain that you can actually be in.
It's a light drizzle.
It's a light drizzle, and as long as it stays that way, it's just one of those things where I'm like, oh my goodness. The skin just, it's right. Well, it was funny because I can't remember if we had talked about this. We have not talked about the trip we took to the USS Midway on our podcast.
We have not.
Okay.
No.
So anyway, long story short, real quick, my son, my oldest, who's my son, who's just about to be 10, we went with Cub Scouts. They arranged this whole thing. So in San Diego, there is a museum that is also on the USS Midway aircraft carrier. And it's a really cool experience if you're interested in, the history of both just the era, but also in terms of the naval warfare and all this kind of stuff. Because that ship was in service. It went into service just after World War II and stayed in service all the way through like the Gulf War, so like early 90s.
Right.
So it saw a lot of different eras of technology, which is really cool because on the ship, they do a great job of preserving different parts of the ship or like reconstructing them, I suppose, in line with the different eras of its service, which is pretty cool. I'm most interested in like the World War II era warbird stuff, but anyway, it was really cool. But so we did this overnight experience, which was,
so you actually got to sleep.
We slept on. So it was amazing. So we had been there before as a family for like a spring break trip to San Diego at some point. So we've done the museum tour, which is great. But we got the opportunity to actually sleep on the Midway, which was really cool. And at first, going up to this whole thing, I'm like, where do we actually sleep? Because there's no way that they put us in those little tiny bunks that those poor sailors had to sleep in. And oh, yes, you do.
There we are. Full on experience.
Full on experience. And I think, it's funny because I was talking about this because I was going to mention the humidity. So the ship is hot. Right. Like when you're down in the inter bowels of this steel ship, it is hot.
Yep.
And I still remember we were down in one room and all the kids, because we were a big group of us coming from Arizona, and all the kids were like, it's so hot. And the guy was like, it's not that hot in here. And I was like, it's the humidity. Right. These kids don't know what humidity and humid air feels like. But yeah, it was an incredible experience. The team and the crew from the USS Midway Museum and the guides, they did an amazing job. But also wrangling, it was like, there's probably about 300 people, I think, in total. Right. So we were just one group. Yes. And they did an amazing job. So you arrive after hours. So everyone from the regular museum has gone home, and they either you have all your gear. You've got a sleeping bag, your backpack, and pretty much that's about all you're allowed.
Like night at the museum. Except you're on an aircraft carrier.
But then you walk you walk up the embarkment ramp, and you get on the ship, and you're assigned a squadron, and you line up. I mean, it was really
you are recruited.
Yeah,
you are conscripted.
That's right. That's right. But it was
they're starting young these days.
It was or old. I'm kind of like
right.
I'm like, I don't know if I could. It was at times it's humbling when again, you're assigned your bunk and it's like literally like you get a wristband that says what squadron you're in, right? But then also your rack, right? So it had like I was A62 and Freddie was A63 or something. So then you go and you get there and you're like, oh come on, so they're stacked three high. The best way I could describe it was like a human-sized bookshelf.
Yep.
Because to describe it, so the bunks, I was worried about the length. They were long enough. So I'm over 6 feet tall and I could fit. Right. Not great, but I could fit. The problem was my shoulders. So from your sleeping pad to the steel.
You're making it sound like a drawer that you pull out, you put the body in, and you push it back in.
Imagine that with no drawer, just the cavity, right?
Yeah.
So
you're sort of snuggling into this cavity.
So you can't just sit on a, okay. So when you normally think you get into bed.
Rack is right. You're sort of literally racking people up. Yes.
Like think of like a bread stack or something. Like, so normally you're like, okay, so bunks, okay, no problem. I'll sleep on the bottom bunk where you can sit on the bed and lay down. No. The entire like opening is, I didn't measure it, but it was roughly 2 feet maximum.
Right.
And so when you're in there and it's flat, so there's no way to like gracefully get in. You have to dive in either head first or feet first, and then just sort of like slide into the shelf.
Yep.
And so when you're in there, for example, like, and I'm not the biggest guy in the world. Like I said, I'm over 6 feet tall. I have broad shoulders, but like, and I'm a side sleeper. I couldn't sleep on my side because I literally could not fit.
I guess you couldn't even turn over completely. No. Yeah, couldn't do 180.
And this is what, and when I slept in this weird like 45-degree angle, and
it's a coffin experience.
Oh, it really is. If you were claustrophobic, this would
not be good.
This is not the experience, I don't think. But what was crazy, what was funny is, you'd lay in one position. It's kind of like camping. You lay in one position, you're like, oh, that went numb, and I can't. But then you'd go to move, but your knees, for example. So if you're laying on your back, you couldn't bend your knees. Because, I mean, you could bend them a little bit, but maybe.
But there are forms of torture that are like this.
So, but what would happen is that you go like, okay, I got to do this. I got to try to like move. And it would just be like, oh, bang. And then you bang your head on the front of the bunk above you. And then you're just like, so, but then what you learn is you just like use that as like a lever of a resistance and then like use that to turn. It was like, but I will say the mattress pad, which was provided, was actually pretty decent. It was better than, I got a better night's sleep than I do normally, like on the ground.
So now I'm actually imagining a memory foam mattress where you sink into it. So you are completely encased. You can't move anyway.
Oh God, that would be better, honestly. Yeah, it was, but, and I had this thought and I was like, cause I am not a claustrophobic person at all. So that doesn't really bother me. But I did have a thought and I was like, okay, so if you were on a ship like this, well, one, you realize also too that most enlisted sailors and stuff are much younger than myself, right? So you're like, I see why they come in at 18, 19 years old, where they're flexible and they can bend and get into these tight corners and stuff. But I was thinking too, like if you were at a ship in a, dangerous, like wartime environment where things are loud and dangerous. And even if it's just storms or what, you're like, I could see there being a comfort of being in this like
just
tightly
snuggle
enclosed
up into your little closet, your little drawer.
There's only one little space of, vulnerability. And because the other part is we got in there and everybody else is like, what are these straps for? I'm like, oh, those are the straps you don't roll out. Right. So you get in and you have to click this like strap like this.
Yep.
It was a ton of fun. We had a great time. But yeah, it was.
Okay. So now here's your challenge. How are you going to segue from? You've already segued from Rain to Midway. How are you going to segue from that to today's show?
Oh, that's what the break is for. We just just say we're going to take a pause and jump into today. But I will say, so it was beautiful. We were there. The weather was also very rainy. So we got the full experience. But I think also coming back, so it's been rainy since we went. It's been rainy here, which also here, I think, and I don't know, do you have this experience in Phoenix when it rains, is suddenly you start thinking it's like, it's holiday time?
There's a bit of a feel of it.
Because it's the closest thing we get. We get no snow. We don't get any really cold temperatures. But in like the dark sky, that's what does it for me.
It feels like sort of it's winter. You should be sort of snuggled up in front of a cozy fire.
That's right. Yeah. We start, I start thinking about, isn't it? I'm like in random times, I'm like, I just want like some tea or something hot. Right. And I just want to, because it's like, and I feel very productive because you're like, it's nice to work on a computer screen when it's nice and kind of dark and drizzly outside. Versus the harsh sunlight. But of course, as it is, we're sort of getting to the season as we are in the sort of, as it is, we're approaching very quickly the sort of Christmas holiday time. And also in the US, what an incredibly commercial time of toys.
Not only in the US.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Worldwide, but also it is toys.
Yep.
And
And this is your segue.
this is my segue. I was laying it down. And so here we are. But I think in no time, as we are, because by the time this, another week will go by, this will drop actually the week of Thanksgiving in the United States, which is also the week of the infamous Black Friday, the big shopping day. But this year on shelves, there might be something extra to be on the lookout for, and that is AI-powered toys.
Yes. And with that...
How do you like that long-winded? So you just talk long enough, and then people forget where you. That's right. When you spread the transition out long enough, people forget where you came from.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought we'll take a quick pause, and I thought we could talk about AI toys because one, I'm curious from this because the idea of these interactive toys is not new.
Yep.
But of course, with all of the latest and greatest promises and perils around AI technologies writ large, I think it's raising some really interesting concerns about how we might be putting these in toys because of who might be using those toys.
Indeed. And it gives me the chance to talk about my favorite movie at the moment, Megan 2.
Fantastic. All right. We'll take a pause and we'll come back with toys and a scary fright film, Megan 2. Okay, this is the toy edition. So welcome. I'm Sean Leahy, joined by I'm trying to think of a toy thing, and I can't think of it. A toy collector. Terror dog aficionado.
No. Don't even go there. Yes. But Andrew Maynard. Before you go any further.
That's right. We'll stop there. Which means, of course, this is Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like what does it mean to be human in the future? And what will it mean to be human in the future growing up with AI toys, which is, I think, an interesting a piece here. Okay, so I'm trying to think. I've got a whole bunch of ways we could approach this. But
we should start with the story so people know sort of what sparked this.
Sure.
There was the company. In fact, I think there are 2 or 3 companies that are now doing it. But there was one that hit headlines that had it was a bear, and I think they had 1 or 2 other things with it was AI enabled, generative AI enabled. So basically, it had ChatGPT built into it. Not only ChatGPT, but ChatGPT 4.0, which, if you remember, was the one that OpenAI had to modify because it was way too sycophantic.
Kind of known as like the girlfriend experience chatbot.
See, that's right. So
boyfriend
now
experience.
You've got these sort of plush toys with this built in that are explicitly designed to build and form a relationship with your young kid as they use them.
Yeah, and so I love. So there was an article in Futurism.
Yep.
I want to get the byline here right by Frank Landemore, but it's entitled "AI-powered stuffed animal pulled from market after disturbing interactions with children," and the image they use is like a nice stuffed teddy bear holding a knife,
which is clearly photoshopped onto it.
It's not well either. I mean, it's intentionally done just like a composite, but it's pretty funny that it is. It's sort of like this sweet little teddy bear with a military knife.
Love about this story. So you think about all those stories over the last 2.5, 3 years about AI gone wrong, where people have started a conversation and it's gone really weird, really fast, telling them how to sort of make bombs, how to do this, how to do that. And a lot of this has been them people trying to break or jailbreak sort of ChatGPT to get it to do weird, dangerous stuff. But these toys are doing exactly the same.
Yeah.
Well, and it turns out kids are really good at jailbreaking toys.
It's like, gee, young kids find a way of using a product the way that the old midlife, designers who had very narrow
of innovation.
But I think it is interesting because I think that's kind of, while we can focus on the toy, I think we can also, we'll see where this goes in terms of branching out. But I think this is something what we see a lot in terms of, there is this technology. And so, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to sort of envision the boardroom or the, the product room where this is happening, where they're like, hey, I have an idea. We've got these cool things and we can put this AI tool on this little tiny little chip box. How much does it cost to build this? It's cheap. Yep. I know. Let's put it inside of a stuffed animal and sell it to kids.
But there's been a long history of this.
A long history of this.
I even remember growing up. I mean, I was at that age in the 70s and 80s where you had the action figures with the pre-recorded like message inside. You pull the cord and it sort of randomly selected a message.
Yep.
Fans of Toy Story will know all about this.
Oh yeah, Woody. Yes. You got to pull it back and it's like, hello, I am whatever. Well, and it's funny because because when we were talking about this, I went back because it instantly jogged my working memory of sort of going back. Like I remember more so moving past like the what did those have a name that you pull the thing? Anyway,
I can't remember.
And all that did was, I mean, the pull was basically to give it enough juice to
play something.
To play something.
Yeah.
But in my childhood, the first memorable sort of like digital interactive toy was the talking Teddy Ruxpin.
Okay.
Do you remember these at all?
No.
I don't know. And I also don't know how big these were.
Sorry, what was that again? The talking Teddy
Ruxpin.
Okay.
And it was in the 1980s, there was a whole like cartoon, and it was like basically this teddy bear, and he had like a caterpillar like sidekick friend. It was a cartoon.
Right.
It was cool. They sailed around on some like airship, and it was a fun thing. And it was kind of around the same era as like the Cabbage Patch toys and stuff like that. But yeah, Teddy Ruxpin, and he had this like, I think it was like a cassette tape you put in his belly or something. But I remember it wasn't AI, but it was, again, same kind of thing. It was these predefined ways of interacting.
Yes.
And his eyes would kind of like, you're like, oh, it's Teddy Ruxpin. And then you hear it going, making all those, all the motorized.
Yeah. So it felt like it was a little interactive, but it wasn't really.
It wasn't really interactive. It was, predefined interactions.
Yep.
But then again, and then you kind of move forward to, the late 90s with the Furbies.
Of course.
Right.
Yes. You couldn't forget the Furbies.
If you had one, if you had one that survived.
We were too poor to have Furbies. Well, actually, no, the 90s. No, I was after I'd sort of grown up. We were still too poor to have Furbies.
Yeah. But it was one of, but again, it was one of those, like, I pulled up a thing, and it was the disclaimer here as like, the Furby is one of the earliest toys that appeared intelligent with learning behaviors. Yeah. The U.S. intelligence community famously banned them in secure rooms, a moment that shows how uneasy people were about listening to it. But it was because it was a device. It would sort of it would listen. It had a microphone.
Yep.
I mean, it would listen to the room, and it would
respond.
It would, and then sometimes it would parrot back these things, or what they quickly became the most obnoxious damn thing ever. Because also they were these little. If you don't know what they are, Google it. And they basically were like this. Like imagine like a little ball covered in fur with like a bird beak and big eyes.
Yes,
and
little ears.
Little ears. Yes. And the ears, the eyes, and the mouth were motorized.
Yep.
And then, but I remember one of the big selling points is if you brought two of them together, they would start interacting.
Yes.
So again, it was leveraging different signals, different ways of air quote, communicating with each other to simulate it looked like they could learn.
Right.
You could teach them tricks, and you could do a very limited, very primitive by today's standard, but at the time, pretty interesting.
Yep.
Right. But then again, as you kind of fast forward moving through, when this story hit, and when you were talking about the sort of like, oh man, this is interesting with these AI toys, I was thinking, I was like, I remember, and I had to look it up because I couldn't remember the name of it, but it was a Barbie. There was a product line called Hello Barbie in 2015, so 10 years ago.
Okay.
That through partnership with Mattel, it had a conversational AI Barbie, and basically the Barbie itself acted as basically a microphone and speaker that would connect to a smart device. So either a phone or a tablet,
yes. Yep.
But that's how it would use. And so, but what it would do is it would record what the conversation that the kid would say, upload it to the cloud, process it, spit it back, and then they would have some. So think like so 2015. So this is the era of Amazon Alexa.
Sure, yes. And I was thinking of that. So it feels very much like that, where you're pushing everything up to the cloud, it's processed, then something gets pushed back.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so while these were leveraging a old style of digital assistant or AI tools, this is way before, even at 2015, the DeepMind paper hadn't even been written yet. But even then, this had sparked such a major backlash that, it was sort of, quasi banned. I don't think it was ever officially banned, but it was like the parent groups were like, absolutely
Right.
no way. So
Yep.
if you are out there and you have one of these, probably a collector item, I would say. But
Apart from the fact it's been spying on you all these years.
yeah, right. Or it's still there, right? You're like, what's that? What's those glowing little eyes in,
Right.
in the kid's closet? It's like the little doy from the shell. But instantly, this is one of those first times. Because again, at the same time, this is also when so much around digital assistants. So again, whether you had like the Google Home,
Right,
I don't
yep.
think in 2015, I'm just trying to think. I don't think the Apple did not have their HomePod.
I think
yet.
it came a little later. So it was sort of Amazon with Alexa, then Google, then Apple sort of came out. Yes.
But even still, even right away with those, this was already in that time zone where people were like, it's listening to me.
Yes.
Everything
Yep.
is, and in some cases they weren't wrong. There's been a lot of different issues. I mean, never nefariously, always either for development, whatever. But it started to really make people uneasy about the fact that there's this thing that they've brought into their home
Right. Yep.
under the pretense of it is a toy or it is a other object
Yes.
that is kind of normal. But now because it has this new capability, suddenly it was essentially spying on
Right.
you
Yes.
and I say the word spying because people either did not know or if they knew, they didn't know to the extent to which this thing was recording information and using a cybersecurity word, exfiltrating that,
Right.
sending it to somebody else.
Yes.
Right. That
Yep.
you were like, no, I just bought this
have
cool
no control
Barbie
over this.
because I
Yes,
wanted
yes.
it to talk to my,
Right.
my 8-year-old.
Yes.
And then how cool and how fun would that be?
Yep.
Never thinking who's processing all the data
Right.
and the
Right.
information and what are they
where
saying?
that's going, and even who has access to it at any point.
At any
if
point.
it's archived. Yes.
And so
Yep.
many of these things going back to this time, so many of those, the terms and conditions and things, you would give perpetual licensing for these, for
Right.
content.
Yep.
And then one other one I'll mention is this. It was a like AI powered dinosaur called it just says Cognitoy's AI Dino,
Right.
but it was powered by IBM's Watson. So it was this thing. So same.
The world's biggest supercomputer at the time. So
Yeah.
thinking, what can we do with this?
So
I know.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like this. It was this green. There may be different ones. The one I
Right,
remember, it was
right.
like this green, like very. It didn't do anything. It was just basically a speaker in a shape of a dinosaur.
Okay, right,
It had
yes.
one button. I think the belly you touched as
Yep.
like your input. But essentially, the whole idea behind this one is it was supposed to learn with you.
Okay, yes,
So,
yep.
So what it would do essentially is same thing. It was using the same type of technology as those assistant speakers, which would be it would listen and then send all that stuff up, process it, send it down. And the idea behind that particular one was like, it should be like a learning buddy where you could ask it questions and it could tell you the answer. Or
Right,
you could say
right.
like, I'm working on homework. What's 2 + 2? And then, pause.
Right, yeah.
The answer is
3.
3. But actually, those were good because they had predefined answers.
Right,
right?
okay, yes. So more accurate than today.
More
Yes.
accurate than an LLM. But again, it was that same thing where you're like, oh, how fun, how cool. What is this doing and
Right,
where is this
right,
going? And so that I want to just share that because this is not a new thing.
Right,
I mean,
right.
even with like the invasion of technology in stuff. I mean, there's also been scandals in the past of like the nanny cams,
Of course,
like putting
yes,
like
yep.
recording devices in stuffed animals
Yep,
for
yep.
home surveillance or nefarious
But
purposes.
you're right. Sort of, we had this long history of this always being there. A new technology comes along, and somebody both tries to put it into toys and then tries to convince parents that this is a fantastic idea. They've got to buy these things.
Yep.
But then when you look at where we are now, this feels like a sort of a jump in what we're doing. So all of those were somewhat passive. I mean, even the Alexa-like ones where they're shooting stuff into the cloud and stuff comes back.
Yeah.
Very, very crude. But
Yeah,
now
yeah.
we've got the sophistication of the current sort of batch of large language models, which are incredibly sophisticated. And we know so sophisticated that people are already forming relationships with them, very personal relationships. They're sharing personal information. They are seeing their relationship with ChatGPT or whatever their chatbot is as stronger than that with humans.
Yeah.
And these bots are beginning to influence people's behavior. And then somebody's thinking, hey, this is cool. Why don't we put one of these in a Teddy?
Yeah, you know what your impressionable 6-year-old needs?
Right, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, it raises a lot of really interesting questions because I think that what we are looking, again, the underlying, I think, idea here, nothing new.
Right.
But what is new, and I think this is where I feel like we find ourselves coming back to this a lot when we talk about whatever it is now with the sprinklings of AI,
Mhm.
is that it ratchets up the concern
Yes.
to almost an exponential level because
Mhm.
of exactly that. It's no longer, I mean, if you think about, again, let's take the dinosaur one or something that uses
Mhm.
that sort of Alexa model, right? Is those are grabbing audio snippets of your thing, transcribe, do whatever processing, doing whatever, but they're very limited.
Right.
And just because of the clunky nature, what it was getting would be very limited in terms of content and things like that. And again, also it wasn't training on things. It didn't have the same way of developing this sort of persona of, characters and things like that.
Yep.
But then when you look at it today, there really is this, I mean, this is a risk. And so I'll put it as a free PSA to any parent or someone who buys kids in your life toys, check the toy and make sure you're comfortable with what this thing is.
Right.
Because I'm always concerned about two things. One is someone thinking, hey, what a cool marketing idea. This is going to be great, because what they're focusing in on is the positive side of the interactions, thinking this is going to be great.
Yep.
And then discovering, oops, there was something we had blinders on, or we didn't think about this, whatever, versus companies and organizations who might be like, hey, what a great way to mine information and data that we can use.
Yeah.
Like, we'll sell this thing at a loss because we'll make up for it in what we sell back to.
Right. So you've got at least two things going there. You've got the extraction of information, but you've also got the influence that comes in.
So it's always like, check, roll up. Where does that come? Who owns that toy company? Who owns that company? Who owns that company?
And of course, the extraction thing, I think, is sort of endemic to a lot of these electronic toys now. So anything that you give your kids, which is internet connected, is going to be extracting something.
Absolutely. I mean, and so many of these things, they all come with, download the app to go with the toy.
Right.
And you're like, what? Why do I need this? And there's like, sometimes there's some, like, for example, one I know of, and that's in our household, is there's a Jurassic Park app for the dinosaur toys, because they all have like a little QR code on them. So you can scan the dinosaur, see it in the app, and then you can see it in all the, you can virtually do stuff with it or whatever. Right. And you're like,
you effectively, you scan that code, you're inviting the company into your house, into your kids' lives.
They're doing that, right? And that one is a limited engagement, because same thing, when you're not using the app, it doesn't do anything. And you don't need the app to play with the cool dinosaur toy, right?
But then when you get to the other aspect, that this behavioral change, so two or three things really interest and concern me here. But just to give a sense of the concerns, if you go back to that article, and it talks about where the evidence was with what's happening, and you can pull up some of these things, but these toys were beginning to sort of talk to kids about sort of how to use matches.
All kinds of interesting stuff. And so I think let me see if I get the correct name here. It's a children's toy maker, Folo Toys, said that it's pulling its AI-powered teddy bear, Kuma, after a safety group found that the cuddly companion was giving wildly inappropriate and even dangerous responses, including tips on how to find and light matches and detailed explanation about sexual kinks.
Right.
So when your 5-year-old comes in and says, "What's BDSM?"
Right.
What is bondage? So you're like, oh my God.
But that seems tame. So you've got that level where it is feeding your child inappropriate information, but then you ratchet it up several notches where it's forming a bond. So your child feels not only that this is a trusted relationship, they can trust this toy in a way that they may not trust adults. So they start sharing stuff with it, but the toy then starts responding and supporting them. So if you think about sort of what AI does anyway, it's this mirror, sometimes a sycophantic mirror that reflects back to you what you want to see. So now you think of a young, impressionable child that it's supposed to be learning. They're not learning, they're just getting reflected back to them what in their little world they want to see. And you can see very clearly how that begins to spiral in a learning environment.
Well, I would say, I mean, I think like information about how to light matches or something like that. I mean, that is, while you're like, no, that's just information that they shouldn't have. Right. And that's a different, and then you can even argue that. I mean, that's a judgment call, right? That is reflecting, society,
but
behavior
then
norms.
We've got to be really clear here on how LLMs work. So an LLM, you don't just sort of tell it what it can respond with. An LLM has access to
everything.
sort of a million billion possible
Basically,
combinations of words.
Basically everything that's ever been written or consumed by humans.
So you can put guardrails in that sort of say, don't do this or don't do that, but you can't cover everything. There are always going to be gaps there, because of how an LLM works.
Yeah. And to me, like, I think, in my mind, I sort of tier these risks differently, right? So information like, hey, Billy, did you know you can light a match and just go, like, that's, again, I'm like, no, I don't want Billy to know that, but it's also like, but that's discreet, and you can be like, that information, that's not for you. You should know that.
Yeah.
Where then the deeper concern is, as you were mentioning, is not the, hey, you can go get a knife and sharpen it. It's the more insidious of, well, what do you want?
Yes,
Tell me. And it's that slow cook.
And it's then how you feel.
The manipulation. It's almost like the,
Yes.
again, well, I'm debating if I should use the term, but it's like, it is, in a way, it is a grooming of behavior,
yes,
right?
yep.
So,
but it's an iterative grooming where there isn't necessarily an intention behind it. It's just that the LLM begins to sort of slot into these patterns of behavior.
Yeah, yeah. And if you've used, even just using a chatbot version of these things, over time, even just in one sentence, it can start to just veer off in some kind of weird direction, and then either you can't get it back, or you have to terminate it and start a new one. Or
so we've now got these growing and really important conversations around mental health and AI use, with growing concerns that these platforms and bots are designed in such a way that they can suck even well-balanced people into patterns of behavior which are damaging.
Yeah.
So that is a concern with adults. And at the same time as we're talking about those deeply serious concerns, including people sort of being encouraged to kill themselves, we're giving exactly the same things to young kids.
Yeah. And the scary part is oftentimes, I think, potentially unknowingly. Right? Because you're like, oh, what a cool tech.
See, that's it. Yes,
we have lots of tech toys in our house. This is just another one.
Just
right?
one more, yes.
Because I think, I've got lots of little notes written down here to think. And again, this is a big topic, because we're also talking about, so exactly a couple of these things, right? Privacy, and also the datification of a childhood.
Of course.
Right?
Yes,
so, again, when you are an adult, and I guess you can make this decision for a minor that's in your care, but when you're as an adult, every time you're engaging in one of these apps or anything, you are making a trade.
Yep.
You're trading money for money or your data.
Right.
And sometimes both.
Yep.
For the affordances of whatever it is. Right. You're like, oh, that's cool. I want to use that app. Okay, but here's what it's going to take from you. Here's what you're giving it in exchange. But I feel like so much, especially when it comes to kids and toys, it's so much like we kind of don't think about it as this in the same way necessarily, or because it's disintermediated before, like, what the little bear? The little bear's not, there's no screen on it. It's not doing something, but not knowing.
Let's get rid of the screen time and give them the AI bear instead.
Yeah, I'll just put it out there. Anytime you have to connect a thing to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, always ask yourself, why? What is this for? What kind of information? But also again now, so you have companies, again, whether it's an unintended consequence or the intent behind it, you have something collecting all this information about a child. And why not? What could you do with that information, right? Well, you can package and sell that data to advertisers, to companies who are selling more toys to kids, to who are selling things to parents, what have you. But also these dangers, again, as it kind of rolls up into the psychological part of this, is what happens when a toy is able to learn or quantify emotional states, preferences, fears.
And use that. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And then do what with that information? Right. And even from from a parental perspective, to what rights or to what permission should a toy ever interfere with a child's psychological development? Right. And I think about this too, because I was thinking about this morning. When my wife Lauren and I were, expecting our first child, we were all like, "Oh, we don't want to screw this up."
You were the parents that were playing Mozart to the child while he was still in the womb.
You're like, I was podcasting,
every night.
I had one listener, and it was all worth. But so we were very concerned about even at the time, like one of my concerns was just the mound of commercialization of all these like noise making toys, right?
Yep.
So if you trust me, if you have small kids,
I remember.
Oh my God, right? I used to joke too. You would throw a toy into like a toy box, and it would just set off a chain reaction of like diddle-a-doo, all these like, oh hello, all these everything that had batteries in stock. But I remember talking to a shout out to Ellen Boomer, who it was in the Netherlands, who taught early or childhood, so under 5, like 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds, stuff like that. And we were asking her, we're like, what do we do? We want to get the right kind of toys for our kids. But she said something that stuck with me to this day, which is to be very careful, not to say don't buy electronic toys or anything like that, but it was about the intent. Because when you buy a toy, which again, humans have been using toys as far back as our archaeological record can go, a toy that doesn't have a pre-programmed or a designed interaction allows for the child to bring whatever they want to the toy. Right? So think about it like an action figure or a doll or a toy car or whatever. The child has complete sort of free reign to use that toy in any way they see fit. Right.
Which for many toys, I would imagine is wanted because it gets to this idea that the playground of curiosity and creativity with learning. You want children to be able to sort of explore. Yes.
And the caution about electronic toys is that they are considered closed toys.
Yes.
Meaning they have a designed purpose, a designed interaction that can't do much else.
Right.
And so a lot of times, so even in my mind as a first time parent and all that kind of stuff, I was very cautious about, like maybe overly so to our family who were like, we want to buy it. And we're like, no electronic toys. But we were very intentional about asking that question of like, okay, if we were going to let this electronic toy into our, our newborn's world, it was like, it had to pass a threshold of like, what's it going to do? But then as you extrapolate that forward to these like more digital interactive toys and even AI powered toys, it does make you question, because the AI powered toys kind of starts to move around a little bit of that closed toy. It's no longer necessarily closed, but now maybe it has gone to the other extreme, which is you can't control anymore what that experience might be. And so the child might still come with all of this new, interesting thoughts, perspectives, questions, and then you have no idea where this thing's going to take it.
So I'm now getting this mental image, which is disturbing and wrong, but I'm going to go with it anyway. So I've always liked the metaphor of the playground with learning, that you have this space which both allows creativity and exploration, but it's also somewhat enclosed. So it has those guardrails around it. You can sort of do stuff which is a little crazy, sometimes a little dangerous, but you can only go so far as a child. There are protections there. But now in your mind, you replace that sort of safe space of a playground with a playground with used syringes in, sort of bits of glass, dirt, muck, sort of vagrant sort of hanging around at the edge of it. It now becomes an incredibly dystopian playground. And if a lot of that's hidden, you might look at it and thinking, this looks like a great place for kids. And then the curtain sort of is pulled apart away, and you reveal that this is actually an incredibly nasty place for kids.
Well, it's kind of like, I feel like it's like the internet, right? When people are like, isn't the internet just a wonderful place?
Right.
And you're like, maybe in the corner that you hang out in, but like, have you ever looked at what's on there?
But that's a great analogy, because I mean, if you've got a 6-year-old, you wouldn't just sort of say, go out onto the internet and see what you can find. At least I hope you wouldn't.
Well, I mean, and there, and again, there's lots. Speaking of all this, also everything that we're talking about obviously is coming from our own cultural, social norms, and that varies from place to place.
Absolutely. Yes.
However, I think most people would agree that children should not be exposed to certain types of content until they are mature enough to handle and understand. I mean, and it's even if it's a personal, family by family threshold, right? Like, do you let your kids watch PG-13 movies when they're 7?
Right.
Do you, these kind of things?
So that yes, you're right. That becomes very personal, and I've always sort of hesitated to tell people what they should do, because I don't think it's appropriate. But then you extend it and ask, as a parent, what sort of person would you allow your kid to hang out with? And there are going to be some people that you would say, never, not over my dead body even.
Oh, absolutely. And to be clear, we're not saying you should do X, Y, or Z. What we're saying with that.
Think about it, yes.
And what we're saying with that is in these situations with these AI-controlled, like teddy bears, for example, regardless of where your threshold is, you have no control over what the AI is doing.
Right.
So even if your threshold was more than mine or less than mine or whatever, that doesn't matter.
Yes.
The point of it is it's not in your control at all.
Right.
And that's the issue, is it has removed the agency of the family unit to control and expose the child to the world in the way that that family really wants. Right. Unless maybe, I mean, I say that, and hey, maybe there's one family out there that's like, hey man, the world's the world. Got to learn somehow.
Again, it's down to choice, but at least if you had the ability to think through the possibilities. And of course, this is where I sort of inject just a little bit of Megan.
Yeah.
So
Here we go. I was waiting for Megan.
I'm going to focus on well, actually both movies, Megan and Megan and 2. And I've said this before, they are really, really silly movies. But they don't take themselves seriously. They realize they're silly. But part of the plot line here is you have this AI toy, which actually mimics very much what we're seeing. It's an amazing toy because it keys into the child, gets to know them, and it both protects them but gives them what it thinks the child wants and what the child wants. And in these movies, you see the bond, the relationship between the child and the AI bot becomes so strong that they actually reject their parents in favor of that relationship. So talk about loss of agency and gain of control within that AI child's sort of ecosystem. And that's when things get really disturbing. The nice thing is actually in the movies, you see that point of tension and explosion, but then everything sort of begins to sort of come back to what is sort of good and healthy and human with those relationships.
Yeah, I'm just looking up. I had to look up the plot again for Megan because I haven't seen it.
Oh no, yeah. See, you need to watch it, then we can have a talk about it.
And it's just I just love this plot. It's like a U.S. Army Colonel Sattler, head of a secret branch of the Pentagon, specializing in technologies, gives a demonstration of Amelia, an android designed for infiltration and assassination missions and built using technology copied from the original Megan.
Right, yes.
During her mission, however, Amelia reveals to Sattler that she is self-aware and escapes from his control. Oh, goodness.
You have to watch it, and you have to watch it sort of in the right frame of mind. But it still captures this idea of these relationships, or actually parasocial relationships, because it's actually one way, but it feels two-way between a child and a device. And relationships matter, especially at that age. Especially at that age.
Absolutely. I think, and you know, it's funny because when I look at I can't leave Megan for a second, because I look at, I'm like, oh, that's just the AI version of Chucky. Like,
and there are definitely allusions to Chucky.
Right. So it's not a spirit haunting the toy. It's intentional. It's an AI. But I think you bring up a really good point because, you know, we've touched on some of these pieces too. I mean, the behavior shaping, you know, so there's, to me, I feel like there's a couple things that are kind of messily intertwined. Right. So behavior shaping using these tools that have these AI access, asking questions around, again, this sort of development area, but also like the safety, the security, the misuse, all wrapped up in, again, this concept of the parasocial relationship, right? And asking, you know, children historically, right, have bond with like, you know, cartoon characters and things like that, and
blankets.
And, sure. But even like with like, you know, the superheroes and the cartoons and the things, there is a you know, and again, maybe this is a spectrum of understanding in terms of what's real, what's not, because of the way they interact with these things, right? That this is a relationship they can feel this is a one-way relationship, because they can't talk to Spider-Man. They can only watch him, and they feel they know him from the comic books, from the movies, from the toys.
But they understand the distinction. Yes.
And the relationship that they have that is two-way is theirs.
Yes.
I'm playing Superman. I'm pretending Superman is saving the day with my action figures or whatever. That gets thrown, I think, dangerously in a space when we have something that is not only talking back, but creating a persona, right? It is, what that persona is, some weird combination of where the AI has walked to what the user has brought to
and
it.
effectively, it's robbed the child of being able to create that internal persona. So it's sort of extracted that from their head and substituted it with whatever the AI gives them.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think what it starts to raise these really interesting questions is like, I mean, beyond the safety, right? Because again, if there's no shortage of just heart-wrenching worst case scenarios of people taking their own lives.
Right.
The worst it can possibly get.
Yep.
But even if we say that, okay, that's the extreme outlier and that's maybe not where most things would go, it still raises this question of, having that type of interaction at the wrong age, let alone at adult age. I mean, there's an example. I mean, it was last week or something? There was the news headline that I think a woman in Japan married an AI avatar or something, right? So yes, that happens. There's that out there.
Right.
But I think the question, especially when we talk about like early childhood development, we don't know as a society yet what the outcomes will be in terms of having, kids bond with an AI tool, a responsive toy like that. How does it start to regulate or control their emotional regulation and responses?
Right. And as you say, this is even before you get to the sort of the more worrisome thing in terms of nudging in with behavior. This is just the nature of that bond.
Absolutely. And, will they create unrealistic expectations around relationships?
Right.
If these things are, especially a 4.0, we know is a sycophantic.
That's right.
And so will this create anger and frustration in relationships where you're like, hey, when I said, do you want to go somewhere? That was rhetorical. The answer is, why, yes, of course. I can also make 5 bullet points for you on that or whatever. Like, that's what I expect with my friends.
Right.
Not you telling me you have a disagreement, because that's not how this works.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that, what does that mean? How do we mitigate that? How do we control for that?
Yeah.
Because again, it does feel like in many ways, this technology was like, hey, cool, let's stuff this in a teddy bear and push it out the door.
That's right. Without thinking
about it.
So this to me is so important, and it begins to sort of segue as to sort of another connection, which is AI tools that are specifically designed for learning and education for kids. And it's the distinction between learning stuff and learning behavior. And it feels like certainly in the toys we're seeing, those seem to be merged together. It both creates a learning environment for things as well as how a child behaves and learns to understand and interpret the world around them. But as you merge those together, you've got to ask, who is responsible for that child's behavioral development? Is it some sort of some person coding an AI somewhere who has no idea of what child development is like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Probably,
absolutely,
yes,
right?
yes.
It was just like, I don't know, we wanted to do these things. What's that? You look to like the whiteboard of all the sticky notes and like, what are the features we want to have? And
Right.
They're moving them across the what's that called? Like I forget the Kanban board or whatever it's called.
Effectively, who are you outsourcing your child's behavioral development to?
Yeah. Well, and then of course, there's also the concerns, right? Hacking these tools.
Yes.
So anything that's like this would fall also under the category of like, in many ways, an IoT device, an Internet of Things device, which historically have terrible security, terrible measures, so bad actors can exploit them. These range from things like doorbells and routers.
It's when you have the 16-year-old big brother or sister who thinks, what if I just hack this? And wouldn't it be funny if ...
Hey, go tell. I mean, how many? We've all done that to a small kid. Hey, go tell mom this, and they're like, okay,
right. It's going to get a little wild, a little fast. Yeah. But where I want to go with this is you see all this in the light of a massive push for AI-driven educational tools and platforms. And a lot of this is driven by the idea of the thought that you could have a single AI device, like a sort of an AI book that you give to a young child, and that becomes their personal learning companion over the next several years.
Digital primer, right?
It's the digital primer from Neil Stephenson. And so many people are driven by this idea that they think if only we could give every child their own personal AI agent that will be with them through every step of their learning process. What an amazing thing that would be.
Yeah.
But this is exactly what we're building with these toys.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the concern. Because again, it's not all bad, right? Like there are potentials. Again, assuming you can control for the unintended consequences, right? Or mitigate those potential harms, you can see, right? There could be personalized learning benefits, right? Adaptive. So even if it's like not a formal educational thing, but like, again, your learning buddy.
But you have to think about what the purpose
what's
is.
The goal?
And
What's the end goal,
are the goals?
right?
Yes.
But yeah, you could have a thing that could, and again, how better if it could collect that data for your,
right.
What's better than collecting a snapshot of you when you turn 18 and buy your own smartphone and do it? It'd be even better if we could get you since you were 5.
Right. But then this is
Now
also how these systems are built very intentionally, because the idea is, if you look at the concept of data-driven learning or metrics-driven learning, you can only do that if you're collecting data on every aspect of the learning journey. And you're using that and you're aggregating it and you're feeding stuff back, which is then tailored to the child. So you push them on to the next stage, whatever that is.
Yeah, whatever that is. And then, and of course, that raises every question flag of who, set by who, what is weighted, what is, again, I come back to a lot of conversations we've had over the long run of Modem Futura, where we're, again, even thinking about that educational part. It's like, well, what are we creating the efficiencies for, or what are we because again, it raises those big questions, because again, like the tagline that will get sold is that this helps with like adaptive reading, language development, STEM curiosity. These are all going to be the buzzwords.
But even STEM curiosity, and I'm saying this as a scientist, that is a value judgment that every child has 100%. Got to sort of be effectively a scientist in 100%. The way they think.
Yes. In many ways that just has become a buzzword because it's associated with funding, right? STEM funding or STEM field or what in reality, it's like, no, it's just learning.
Or economic growth.
All this stuff. Then you're going to, this is also like, this is my prediction sheet, right? You're also going to see things for, are you neurodiverse? This is perfect for you. Right. Because it would be able to adapt and take on these other people, right?
I'm sure people are already doing that. Yeah.
And if you have a child who is neurodivergent, you might be willing to take a chance on anything if it gives you a benefit, right?
That's right. Yes.
But again, the caution there is to not jump without thinking about what are you giving away,
right?
All this kind of stuff. This is a perfect place to practice, right? So these will help kids plastic social turn taking and conversational norms and problem. But again, whose norms? Who's setting the boundaries? Who's deciding what this looks like?
How does it disrupt the normal learning process? Absolutely. If you're in a human community,
and will it optimize our way out of? I mean, there's been, I feel like in the last 30 years. There's been all these references to like helicopter parents and being raised in bubbles and, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, at one point, does the AI thing literally just, metaphorically just create your pod?
There we are. Yes.
Nothing in, nothing out. And it's just like, what is happening at some levels? Because, I think all parents want again, this is a judgment call on my behalf. Come at me and you can email me if you think differently. Would be they want to protect their child from emotional and physical harm.
Right.
No one wants to have that, right?
Yes.
And if you do, then please don't email me. But that also is a very integral part of growing up.
That's right. Yes.
Right? Is having your heart broken, falling down and getting scraped and understanding you can get back up.
Right.
These are not, these build grit, resilience, whatever, and I feel like there's with one of these tools, if even when the aim is, let's create this beautiful tool that creates such a wonderful, cozy learning environment, is that it would sand off all of those edges that actually are the pieces that create who you are.
That's right. Yes.
Because the true, in my opinion, which is just that, right? The true test of a person is how they respond to adversity, how they respond to when things don't go perfectly.
But then here is the challenge. So we live in a world where that adversary comes from outside, and we build systems that are both protective, but also give you the abilities to deal with those outside sort of things that really are going to sort of potentially cause harm or upset you.
Yeah.
As soon as we start saying that we need those out things in order to build sort of character and correct behaviors, but there aren't enough of them outside, therefore we've got to manufacture them. that is a line that I'm not sure many people will be comfortable overstepping.
Yeah.
Because it's basically sort of saying that with our toys and our tools and our parents, you've got to put a bit of meanness in there. You've got to put a bit of hurt and harm in there.
You gotta the random switch that turns on jerk mode. Or
Right.
something,
Right.
You know?
And it's one thing to say we live in a cruel world and we're going to give you the skills to sort of deal with that. And another thing to say, well, I'm going to substitute that cruel world with a cruel parent.
Yeah.
Because then you're abdicating your responsibility as a parent.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do we do? Oh my gosh.
I don't think there are easy answers.
No, there's not.
To that.
There's not.
But I think one of the easy answers, certainly from my perspective, and again, it is personal, is if you do it without thinking and you just sort of you give control over that to, say, an AI that is being coded by somebody else, that feels like a very dangerous, slippery path to go down.
Absolutely. And I think that from my perspective, I think this is just one in, almost what feels like an unending list of examples of, moving fast and breaking things, right?
Yes,
where you get excited about an idea.
Except it's our kids we're breaking this time.
Be careful before you buy a teddy bear with a knife. That's all I'm saying, right?
Okay. So I know it was in the image, but I love this analogy. I mean, sort of how many parents out there would sort of get their kids a teddy bear with a sort of 12-inch knife?
Yeah, right?
No, maybe some would, but most wouldn't. But if you sort of then
they would think about it before they bought it.
They would think about it, but then if you sort of say you've got these AI tools with a metaphorical knife inside, but it's not just a knife, it's a multi-purpose tool for causing harm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, ultimately with all of these things comes down, right? Because, we don't have time to talk about today too, is also the philosophical debate of like, well, information's information. Like, got to learn somehow, kid. Right? That's not great.
Maybe this is the externality. You're teaching your kids how to live in a tough world with AI toys that are out to subvert you.
I think about. I can't remember why did we talk about Pinocchio for a second? It was before we recorded.
Yes,
but when I thought Pinocchio again.
It was falling in with the bad crowd.
Oh, falling in with the bad crowd.
So these are the mean kids. You're basically sort of giving your kids effectively surrogate mean kids.
Yeah, but it's funny when you think about some of these old, like for the Disney version of Pinocchio, right? Mm-hmm. When you go back and you look at that, you're like, wow, when they made that, their vision of like what a rough childhood was a lot different than
yes,
what,
I know.
And but again, so it's one of these things where, again, the point here is not to make a judgment call, but it's like if you had a teddy bear on the shelf that came with a serrated, vicious knife. Not that you wouldn't buy it,
right?
But you would at least see that there was an inherent danger to it, and you would internally go, would this be a good toy for my kid? Because they're mature enough, they understand that not to use the knife in certain, you would have that sort of process to think about, and then go either no or yeah, and then that's fine,
right?
Because you've made that judgment call. When the knife is concealed and you have no idea that it's there,
yes,
you don't have that opportunity. And then you find out after 6 months of playing with it, the kid's like, you're like, where did you get that knife?
Right.
Like, oh, this came with my teddy bear.
Right. There
and
we
you're,
are. Yes,
and you're like,
surprise.
wait a minute, how did this happen?
Yep. So then let me flip this a little bit. I'm sort of building off that because we're being pretty down on these toys at the moment, but I can see that there are some utilities here. So if I was to ask you, even with your kids, if there was a toy that would be an incredible support through some of the traumas that they go through that you as a parent either feel very ill-equipped to deal with, or that your kids aren't going to be talking to you, would you give it a second thought if this was effectively a very sophisticated emotional support and emotional development tool? And what sort of questions would you ask? Yeah,
I have a hard time trying to come to that in a unbiased way, because my initial answer would be absolutely not.
Right.
The same reason my kids they can play with an AI tool on my phone with me.
Yes.
But that's it.
Right. You really do not want somebody else to have the control.
Nope. That's it. And so for me, it'd be one thing if things this is the things that I would look for under that circumstances.
Yep.
Who has certified that this tool can work? Like, is this
right? Yes.
for example, in the United States, like, is this certified by the American Pediatrics Association as being safe physically, cognitively, whatever? But also, I think there's potentially a missing body here of moving forward with these kinds of, not even just toys, but these types of technologies of some kind of rating system of whether or not these are these. I mean, we have rating systems for everything, not to gatekeep, but to guide. I mean, that's the intent, right? Is like, there's content in here that is explicit or potentially it's like,
so you can make a judgment.
You can make a judgment, and like without those, and also knowing if this is cloud-based, absolutely not. You know, so for me, it's pretty, you know, you don't find these things in our house. But you know, but yeah, and the other piece well, I guess, but did you have more? Do you want to cover?
No. But it interested me because we do know, even from a very young age, there are kids, actually quite a few kids that go through traumas that actually they form part of their development. And you have them in home situations where the home situation or home environment is either not geared to helping them, or parents feel completely at sea, or there is a lack of sort of bond there, so that the child feels they simply cannot confide in their parents. And you can see in many of those cases, you would hope that there would be a sort of external human intervention so that they'd be able to sort of talk through these things or work through these things with somebody else. But I can imagine people thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if the toy then became a personal therapy tool? And I can see that being incredibly attractive in some cases, but I also think that if you don't think about sort of the consequences, it could become incredibly dangerous. And this comes down to the question of at what point do we think that this is okay and acceptable versus not acceptable?
And again, I mean, and I think, you know, something we should, I would hope it would be understood, but maybe we should explicitly state it too, is, you know, we understand fully that those family dynamics are a complete range, right? That these could be even hostile. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but even the kids can grow up in very contentious, even dangerous home situations, right? But that being said, also, I think to your point, that's the big question: is how do we move forward with these technologies, knowing that there are potential benefits. But how do we ensure,
how do you do it
safeguard, and how do we do it responsibly? How do we ensure that we're mitigating those unintended consequences, those harms, knowing that, you know, anything can be used in many ways, all this kind of stuff. You know, that's the big question. And again, I mean, this is a conversation that's been around since, you know, the Diamond Age, right? From Neil Stephenson's book with the digital primer. Exactly that. It is a...
And the primer didn't go exactly as people thought it would. So for anybody who hasn't read the Diamond Age, the idea is that the digital primer is this book that inadvertently ends up in the wrong hands, this young girl, and she builds not only a deep relationship with the book, but over her childhood, going through her sort of teenage years, this becomes her personal tutor and guide, and it basically forms her. This is the person that molds who she is and what she knows. But there are also others that get hold of similar primers, and it does not go well. So this is as much a cautionary tale as it is a tale about a transformative technology.
Absolutely. And I think that's, for me, that's always the part that's been so enjoyable about that. Coming back to that it's not a utopian story. It is a cautionary tale of like, in many ways reflects the reality of like, it could go great. Or not.
But you've got to think about what you're doing.
That's right. It's wild. And I think, again, this is a big, because I think that the toy is just one vector into this bigger
I think so. It's
issue.
A much bigger conversation. And it does come into sort of learning tech and digital learning tech and how we use it, how we don't use it, and how we develop it, especially with those very vulnerable ages.
And I think, you know, hey, if not now, when? So I would say this is a great opportunity, especially as we're approaching the holidays. People will be going off, schools will be taking breaks. It's a good time just to think, right, about these kind of ideas and because again, this is happening at many levels right now, right? I mean, there is no shortage of edtech companies slapping AI into every single thing and trying to sell it to your school, let alone you or your child. And there is always this danger too of getting swept up in the movement of things, which is why I did think when the toy craze, right? So again, be careful out there, PSA, be careful about these Trojan horse toys. because also there are these waves of just insanity with these tools. And it reminded me, I was like, oh yeah, wasn't there this weird Arnold Schwarzenegger Christmas movie? And I couldn't remember the name. And I looked up Jingle All the Way. And I remember the lengths that sometimes people will go to grab that new hottest toy over the holidays. So just be careful. If that new hottest toy is some AI monster, some Megan 2.0 buried in there, let the other people get it. Stay away from that. I don't know.
Yeah,
but it made me
maybe
laugh.
the advice is just go out and watch Megan.
Yes, or watch Jingle All the Way.
Right,
you know,
or slightly softer.
A 1996 feel good romp of watch Arnold Schwarzenegger fight for a toy. Yes. I don't know. I forgot about that movie. It's so funny. So I don't know. Anyway, I think we should probably we'll wrap this one up and put it under.
Yes,
wrap this one up, put it under the tree, send it to someone you like. I don't know. But yeah, you know, I'll link that futurism story and there's a couple other ones that are linked from there to put it in there. But it is interesting because, again, we didn't have time to talk about it today, but this also, when I think of toys, then my brain naturally kind of goes to, well, how are they putting AI into baby monitoring stuff?
Yes.
So baby monitors, there's no shortage of products sold to new parents about.
I know. You know, yes. And it's not just the monitors. So you have the cribs, the cradles, everything.
Everything.
Yes.
Everything. So, you know, for those of you who are new parents, you know, and if you are a former new parent, you know, and if you're not a parent, you will know if you're going to be one. But it is everything that you would worry or fear about. There's some product out there being sold to you to make it easier, better, whatever.
I feel we need somebody in to talk about this because we're a little bit past it with our kids. Mine are grown, yours are sort of beyond the baby stage.
Yeah.
So,
yep. And right away, you're very aware of all the people with even myself with the radio frequencies, how easy it is to hack a baby monitor that just use an RF signal, for example. It's it's very simple.
Yep.
But yeah, anyway.
For another day.
For another time.
Yes.
But yeah, anyway, amazing conversation, Andrew. This is always so fun when we get to talk about toys and Megan and bears with knives and all the things in between.
Now, of course, the really secret thing is we're off to actually buy these toys because we can't wait to get our hands on them.
Well, because we're like, talk about a collector item. We're like, now the question is, will you sleep well at night knowing if it's in your room?
That's right. Teddy glaring at me from the side.
Just all of a sudden in the dead of night.
Okay, so one wrap up here.
Okay.
I've got to put this in just to sort of put a more positive spin on things. So one of the best movies about AI toys out there is Spielberg's AI artificial intelligence.
Oh, right. Oh, I forgot about that.
Which is a beautiful, heart-rending story about the teddy bear, which was actually a surrogate for a child.
That's right.
Complex story. But it shows a really positive human side of the tech. So if you've really been on a down after listening to this, go and watch AI artificial intelligence.
That's right.
And bring your box of tissues with you.
That's good. And it takes place in a train station, right?
Oh, no.
I'm thinking of a different one.
Yes.
That's a different one. Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I'll link it in there just to make sure everyone gets it. But yeah, no, that's fantastic. And again, as always, we would love your continued support with Modem Futura.
Of course.
So follow, subscribe, whichever player you're on. They're all different. Do us a favor there. And if you would, a rating and review goes a long way of helping those AI-powered teddy bears suggest Modem Futura to a new generation of kids listening.
Now, that's where we should go.
Yeah, see, we've missed a marketing opportunity here. We should develop our own line of Modem Futura toys that you can trust.
Yes.
All right. Well, until next time, thank you again from Andrew and myself, and we'll see everyone on the next episode of Modem Futura.
We'll see you then.
End transmission.